Hi, I'm Deborah Bernagosi, co-founder and executive director of Signal Culture. I'm here with Alan Riley, our artist in residence this week. And in our library, we have Alan's book, Internet Environments, which was his MFA thesis at Alfred's Electronic Integrated Arts program. Tell us about your book, and thank you for donating it to the library.
You're welcome. No, I was so thrilled to see this here. I know I mailed it to you, but I'm still happy to see it.
Yeah, well, actually, and we had it like out displayed without me
was...
even thinking about that you were coming. It just happened to be out, so that was fun. That you looked up and there it was.
Yeah. So this is my this book is from 2012. I created this in the summer after I completed my MFA thesis exhibition at the New York State College of Ceramics at Alfred University. And I'm not sure where to begin. I guess I'll start by just saying that my thesis advisors were Per Boda, Barbara Latanzi, and Nick Cooter, and the chair was Joseph Shear. And but so many people helped me with it. It was just a lot of fun. The projects that I did were all gathered under this title of Internet Environments. And what I was thinking about at the time was about it was at this moment where social media was becoming synchronized with everyday life. And so I was thinking about what does it mean for this technology or this kind of infrastructure, way of thinking, this kind of physical presence and behavioral presence of the internet. What does that mean, or how can we understand this transformation that's taking place, this new kind of synchronization that's taking place? So I developed a series of pieces that kind of staged situations, environmental situations for people to explore aspects of the internet as a kind of a physical environment. Part of this, I guess I'll start with there was a piece called Evidence Timeline this piece is was made with a laser engraver, and it is all it's pieces of a conspiracy theory website that are engraved on stone or on shale tiles. So I was really interested in the and I guess I'll explain the rest of the piece. So there were many tiles, this whole collection of this sort of fragmentary website, and then I installed this inside of a cabin, and so viewers
that you built.
Yes, inside of a cabin that I built, and let's see if I can find
an actual legit cabin,
Yeah. I called it a shed in the thesis because it was originally supposed to be a shed, but it really it's a cabin. So there's lots of different threads that come together here. I got into the cabin thing unrelatedly to this piece, but they kind of converged because I was thinking about this mixture of kind of utopianism and paranoia that exists around the internet, and it kind of still does, but this sort of relationship, the way that's expressed transforms over time. But there have always been conspiracy theories on the internet. There always have been websites where people are presenting these theories, but so I was kind of seeing this kind of analogy between the conspiracy theory website and the cabin, because it's kind of the cabin could be Thoreau's cabin or it could be Ted Kaczynski's cabin, and anyone can make their own website. There's this sort of pioneerism that's very, very prone to to corruption. And maybe there's like an intrinsic relationship between this kind of like pioneerism and utopianism and the sort of conspiratorial corruption. So that was the kind of like the big piece in the show, was this cabin in the woods with a conspiracy theory website engraved on stone. And you would be driven out to the woods in a shuttle van that I rented from the Alfred Motor Pool. And my friend Jonas Lindberg, who's an MFA student in the Sculpture and Dimensional Studies program, volunteered to be the driver. So folks would go up and for viewings during the opening for that day.
And where was the cabin located?
It was up in Alfred Station, so like up, there's all these hills there, and so it was up a hill, and at the property of Peter Roberts. Okay. And he's a designer and an inventor of a kind of a style of masonry. He's a masonry designer. He makes geodesic concrete structures. And he had a lot of land and was excited about my interest in building a shed that became a cabin. And so he allowed me to build on his property. And the structure remained there for 10 years. And he had some new prototypes that he needed to build and asked me to move it or to remove it in one way or another. And after some deliberation, I spent like 6 months trying to figure out what to do with this thing. But the thing that ended up making the most sense is that I took it down with Dan. Now I'm forgetting
Volk.
Dan Volk.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. He was a super
He's a
nice
good
guy.
friend. So.
Yeah. And Dan Volk and Angus Powers, who's a glass professor in Alfred, came out and we took the thing apart in panels. And then we moved it to Dan's property, and he had some plans to build a blacksmith shop out of the pieces. But I haven't seen yet if he did that, but I'm excited about it.
I'll find out.
Okay. Yeah. And then there was
quick question.
Sure.
But then do get back to was this an actual website or something that you created?
No, it was an actual website. I write about the website in the thesis book, but now I've had a lot of different twists and turns at this project over the years, and I still have all the tiles. They're not in Alfred. They're in a wooden crate in the woods behind my parents' house in Massachusetts. But yeah, I write about the origins of the website in the book because there is this kind of interesting relationship with language that the author of the site had developed. But really, I don't know if it's at the time of writing the thesis, I was like, I'm citing this public document because I think it's interesting, it's problematic, and it's offensive in many ways, but I wanted to engage with this topic of conspiracy theories because I felt like it was going to become an important part of the internet environment, which it has. but in terms of the origin of the site, I just kind of felt like there were some ethical, I have a different ethical stance in relation to citing it today because it's really it's not a happy website. And I don't think that the author was sharing this out of enthusiasm. I think it was an expression of suffering. And so I'm not really it's in the book. So if you want to check it out, then you can look at the book. But if I ever restage that piece, I might obscure the origins of the site a little bit out of respect for this person and their life and family and whatever else. I think it's it was a complex MFA thesis project that I had the opportunity to create. Yeah, and then it's the cabin and the slate pieces kind of converged, and then they split off from each other.
I kind of love that they're in a crate in the woods. That's a great place for conspiracy theory to kind of live for a while. Yeah.
I don't think you would be able to figure out what it was from the pieces, and the website isn't available anymore. So it's not if you really wanted to figure it out, you probably could, but it's sort of part of the mystery now.
Right.
So yeah, and that was one of 3 pieces that I did. There was a performance. It was actually it was a lot of stuff, because while that was happening, like people were going up to see the shed, I did a live performance with a collaborator who is a stenographer, or like a real-time reporter, named Mirabai Knight, and she's certified as a real-time verbatim reporter, so she could do like court reporting, but she really is more focused on like accessibility and learning spaces, and is doing a lot of interesting things in New York with that. But she agreed to collaborate with me, and we did this sort of surveillance piece where there was a video, there's like a live video feed of the gallery, and then another monitor of Mirabai who's like typing, and there's a transcript. Her transcription is showing up on top of the live video of the place.
Interesting.
So it's really just, it was like a human powered speech to text. But this was at a time, like, again, like it was like speech to text, or seeing your words represented as text on the screen was kind of uncanny in this moment. But what I was really interested in with the piece is the idea that information is like a material product of human labor, and it's not as some kind of like dematerialized force or something that just exists, but there's always some kind of human labor that is producing information.
Right.
So I was looking at the stenographer as this kind of like archetype of somebody who takes speech or kind of the testimony that just exists as it's being spoken, and then transforms that into something that we consider information within a system.
Interesting. And do you have any photos that you could like flip to quickly to get a sense of what that was like? Yeah.
So this is Mirabai Knight, who's my collaborator, and then this is how it was installed in the space. These kind of these monitors that were on pedestals. And so it was visually like, when I look at this documentation, I'm like, oh, I wish that these were bigger. Like, we need more screens.
Yeah.
But yeah, and then the third piece that I had there was it was called Electronic Intranet. I had a few different names for this piece, but it was really based around this cable that I made, which was an Ethernet cable that had audio RCA cables tapped into the receiving and transmission lines of the internet connection. And so I took those and then I patched that into an audio-visual system in a room, so that when folks would sit down and browse the internet, all of the data that was being transmitted would be fed back to them. Not as like a visualization, but just like the actual like waveforms of the data would just be amplified in the space.
The transmission sounds,
yeah. So it's just like the electrical activity of the Ethernet connection was made audible and visible to them.
Yeah, interesting.
And it was it's kind of was like a noise music piece in a way. Like I was thinking about like the Ethernet cable as an instrument, or as like an electric guitar and I had it plugged into a guitar amp with a bunch of pedals. So it was like kind of this loud engulfing experience. And I that was a way of making the kind of like the physicality of these transmissions very, very evident to people who were there.
And were the pedals set in a way, or did people interact with them live?
I set the pedals up in a particular way, just so that, because that could go all over the place.
Yeah.
Before and after this MFA program, I was a volunteer at the Dream House in New York, the Lamont Young and Marian Zazila installation. Oh. And so I was kind of thinking about that too, in a way too, of just like the sound environment, and they had that tuned in a very, very specific way. So my piece was not doing any of the things that piece is doing, which has to do with prime numbers and kind of these close harmonies that transform the sound as you move around in the space. But I was like thinking about trying to make a very specific sound that I wanted to connect with this moment.
And when people were not like physically engaging with it? Was there a bass sound that it would have?
Yeah, there was a bit of
change
noise,
over
and I
time?
had there's like a noise and like a tremolo pedal that creates like a kind of like a feeling that there's some kind of like that you're going to be disrupting some kind of membrane by interacting with it. So that was there was that sound.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the book has, so those are the three pieces that were the kind of the core part of internet environments. This image that's on the front and back of the book are the ways that you would see the shed from the gallery. And the book also has a lot of other stuff in it, like some photography, like cables running through the forest, and some other background materials regarding my filmmaking practice and work with analog video and audio signal processing in Alfred.
And this is a Sandine image processor.
Yeah, so this is the Sandine image processor, and this was sort of the first tool that I learned to use as I was learning to work with this kind of signal-based approach to making audiovisual art. Yeah, I also made this. This is a very funny piece. I made this. This is I before I did this program, I was doing lots of special effects and practical effects for fantasy movies. So I made this creature out of a rotting puffball mushroom. So just like putting stuffed animal eyes on there. So there's a bit of background around like the book also has this background around like how I adapted my approach to like semi-improvised narrative movie making and practical effects, and how that then connected with the live signal processing and this thinking through the physical presence of the internet as it was becoming part of everyday life.
And a lot of times, it's 13 years after you graduated now, we can feel really, sorry.
I have no idea what you're going to say.
You just look like, oh no.
No, I mean, I have a lot to say about that. Just relationships with older work. I often feel this way. Like I love the music that I made when I was in middle school. I still have all that stuff. Like I'm very much like, when I look back, I will see things that I feel differently about now. Like I described in the evidence timeline piece. I feel differently about that now. I wouldn't make that work the same way today. But I feel like I have a relationship with the person who made that, and sometimes I like him and sometimes I don't, but like, I feel like we're helping each other. Yeah. That's how, and so like, I have this film, the second feature film that I made, Doomed, is the fantasy film. I shot that between 2009 and 2011, but then I didn't really complete the film until 2021. Oh, and it really felt like I was like reaching my arm through the vortex of time and being like, I'm going to help you, like young man, I'm going to help you make this movie right now.
Oh, that's great.
So that's how I relate with this stuff.
Yeah.
So, and then like, there's other things too. I just learned a lot more. I was very anti, there's aspects of the work that I did in my MFA that I think has a visual component, but I was kind of like restraining the visual element a bit more than I would today. I think that I felt like it was sort of, it was like phony or something if you cared too much about the visual presentation of your artwork. And so I relied a lot on like the natural textural materials of the stone tiles and the way that material interacts with the laser engraver. And that is still like very fascinating to me, like just like the material interactions that can produce beauty. But like I think that I would, if I revisit this work, I would think about the presentation probably a bit differently. And like I said, more screens. Or there's also all this other work that I did back then that didn't even get in here. I was like, I felt like everything had to be new for the thesis, but it was like, that's not how this works. You have 2 years to do the program, and then during that 2 years you make the work. But almost all of this stuff I did in the semester of the thesis.
That's funny.
Which is like, those 3 pieces that I mentioned.
Yeah.
I was like, why?
Yeah.
and like, and like papers that I wrote for classes, that's not in here.
Yeah.
So that's one big lesson that I think that I learned is to use your work.
Yeah, right.
Use your work. So that's, Is that where you were going with the question?
Yeah, I was interested because sometimes people feel so disconnected from stuff they did even a couple of years before. And now that you've got a decent amount of distance, I was curious where you were with it. So it's interesting. Yeah.
Okay, yeah. I mean, I think it was a cool show. I also have this feeling of like, it's very, very special there because you can go really deep into making stuff, and there's very little distraction aside from what's happening in your own psychology.
Yeah, it's literally a village, so there's nothing else to do.
Yeah, so you really go deep into your stuff, and that's beautiful. There were a few friends from out of town that came to see the show, but really, like, aside from this book, there hasn't been much. Like, I didn't leave my MFA and then immediately be like, okay, now how am I going to get this show set up somewhere else? I was like, what am I going to do next?
Yeah.
So I just kind of like chucked it all and like started new things.
Yeah.
But so now I always tell people who are doing MFAs, I'm like, when you finish, you should try to show that work again.
Yeah.
But I still kind of like, I'm interested in that. Like it's in the back of my mind of like, is there something that I can do with these ideas? And especially now that like the context of the internet has transformed so profoundly since then. I kind of like want to do that and be like, like internet environments too.
Yeah.
Or like what would that mean to revisit the stuff? So I've been thinking about it a bit.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah. Okay. Well, is there anything else you want to add?
No, I think that this is not off the top of my head. I mean, there's so many people that helped me with this, so but it's. Thanks for listening to me talk about my MFA thesis from 12 years ago. As of this video is being recorded in 2025, so I guess it's almost 13 years ago.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you.